flag, United States, to the republic, one nation, liberty, justice.
Good evening. Brian back there.
He's hiding behind the podium.
Nice to see some of you again. I guess the first item on the agenda is approval from our March 9th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections?
So moved.
Second.
Properly second discussion. All in
Aye.
favor?
All right, thank you. Obviously, thanks for coming today. We haven't met for quite a while, since obviously back to the first part of March or early March. So to start it off, I'd like to give you a brief update on what we've been doing with this pandemic issue going on. Just some updates on where we've been and where we're headed to, we think, with customers. And I guess first I broke down your memo with what we did with employees. And so first 2 weeks, we really had people kind of staying at home as much as possible, just doing general maintenance items as needed for emergency responses, not for any planned work. But in early April, we started to bring some staff back to more regular schedules, and that carried on through most of April. And then May 4th, we had most staff back at that point. So most of the month of May, we've had the majority of our staff back and working a regular 40-hour schedule. We have tried to do social distancing with office staff and move desks around. We are trying to rebuild the customer service desk with a more permanent barrier. In the past, it was just an open space between the customer and our staff. And we're looking to rebuild that wall so it goes to the full height of the ceiling, or as high as possible, and then having a paper pavement pass through. My mask keeps falling down here. Having a pass through, we can interact with customers, keep our staff safe. That looks like it's going to be around mid-June as to when that would be installed. So still a couple weeks out yet. But we're trying to do as much as we can in the office here. Customer-wise, I gave you some statistics on what we've had for delinquent accounts and customers that are in arrears. So last year at this time, we had 889 customers that were delinquent for about $360,000 total. And in 2020 here, we've had a little over 2,200 customers that are delinquent for a total of $725,000. So obviously that this impact is affecting them directly, and I think we're all seeing that. We know that. We did stop performing shutoffs for non-payments in mid-March. The state had ordered some of those non-payments or non-shutoffs issues to be implemented by utilities for water practices anyways. We were already doing that for both electric and water, so that didn't really impact us that much. But we've been extending it monthly as we've been going, and right now our current waiver is June 12th, and that's important because that date corresponds to the end of a billing cycle for us and for our customers, and that will make sure that every customer has been afforded the same benefit as every other customer. So that gets us through one complete billing cycle. That's how we ended up on June 12th. But obviously we can't continue that policy forever. You can see the amount of money is substantial. And while I had somewhat anticipated that number to be a little bit higher than what it was, that does show that a lot of our customers are still paying their bills and doing what we're hoping that they do. But we can't continue that process. And as well, businesses are going back into operations now. Employment's starting to ramp up again with the state opening up. And so we're recommending that these temporary waiver policies stop at the June 12th billing cycle. And that at that time, we would go back to our regular process of implementing late payment penalties and starting shutoffs for customers that haven't entered into some kind of a payment arrangement with us. Normally, the payment arrangement would be a 1 month or a 1 billing cycle to the next bill whenever that was due, typically a month away. In this case, we know customers are probably going to have a fairly large amount of money that they may owe to us because maybe they're behind several months. And we're also getting into the summer months. Air conditioning load is going to be kicking up. And so utility bills are going to be going up just in general. So our proposal or our recommendation is to allow for a 3-month payback payment arrangement. And that would be effective, so say July, August, and September. And as long as the customer kept those payment arrangements and kept the current balance due paid, then they would not be subject to disconnection or shutoff. So we felt that was enough time to get them to get back to work, start getting some income back in, give them a little more leeway. It also allows us to do shutoffs potentially in October, and typically the weather doesn't get cold enough that we can still do shutoffs to encourage payment of past due bills. But if we wait until November, typically the temperatures are going to be getting down into the 30s, and we don't do shutoffs if it's below freezing. So once it typically hits below 32 degrees, we stop shutoffs. So, if you wait much longer than what we're proposing, you could potentially have somebody that would go almost this entire year without having any kind of a shutoff or making any kind of a payment. And you can imagine what somebody's bill would look like if that would occur. July is also the month when financial assistance is available from HEAP and Salvation Army for the cooling season. And so we think it kind of does match up well so that customers who maybe aren't typically used to getting financial assistance for utility bills, maybe they could apply, get some money to help lower their bill. That would ease up on their the payment plan they would have with us then for those next 3 months. So that would be helpful. The other thing we did was we changed some electric customer rates that experienced a shutdown or reduction in their electric load. And our rates currently have a minimum demand charge depending on what class you're in. And so if let's say your minimum demand was 500 kVA, and you're typically over that amount, you don't pay the minimum, you just pay whatever you used. But if you had a shutdown and your minimum, you actually used, say, 200 kVA, we would still bill you for 500. And you could see that could cause a large offset or a large expense for the utility bill for something they didn't actually use, especially at a time when they really maybe couldn't afford to be paying that higher electric bill. So we did drop some customers' rate classes down to what their actual usage was if they had not shown any kind of a historical trend from the past year or two that maybe that was a typical month where they had to slow down as part of their business operations. I think about 15 to 20 customers were impacted by that or benefited that in that way, and that got them more in line with what a typical electric bill for that load would be for us. We would not normally do that, but given the situation, these are not normal times. Budget and sales-wise, revenue-wise, we are going to experience, some negative impacts from this. Obviously, every business is going to see reduced sales. It is going to likely increase our 2020 projected losses for the year. I don't have good numbers to share with you at this point in time, only because the dollars and the revenue tends to lag the usage, and until we can see what we can get back from the delinquent customers, it's kind of hard to predict exactly where we're going to end up financially yet this year. I hope that as the summer goes on, we'll get some more information about what happened in April, because that really was the first full month that we had where we didn't have any, customers were shut down. March kind of occurred somewhere in the middle, depending on what kind of a customer you were. And so some were more affected than others. I can tell you that on the electric sales, we did see about a 25% drop in electric sales over that from the time that the stay-home order was implemented. So electric sales are being impacted substantially by this. Of course, that impacts the kilowatt-hour tax that goes to the general fund, and that also is going to impact the Water and Sewer Capital Improvement Fund because of the loss of income tax that's going to be paid into that fund. Lori had asked staff to prepare a budget cut plan of at least 10%. We did prepare that. This was operating in capital only. It did not look at salaries and fringes at this time. We're just trying to see where we could cut costs, where that low-hanging fruit was for the year. So we did submit that. I just sent that to you today. I'm sorry I didn't send it to you before. I should have sent that to you when I sent it to Lori, but I did not. But you do have a copy of that in your emails today. If you have any questions about that now, I can cover some of those questions if you may have any. I know you probably haven't had a chance to look through a lot of that information, but if you don't have any today, if you have any questions next day or two or the next few weeks, please email me or call me, and I'd be happy to go over those with you. We did cut back on capital projects as well, our expected expenses. It's not to say that plan is definitely what's going to go into place, but it is a plan if we, depending on where we see revenues at, if we have things we need to cut, then those things would be cut. I can tell you we've tried to reduce as much expenses as possible. We've cut back on capital projects where we can. Those that were already underway or going forward, those are going to continue going forward. If we had a loan for certain projects, I anticipate those will continue to go forward because the loan dollars are really not going to be impacted the way revenues will, because that loan money will still be coming in. I think that's what I had for you on the COVID update. There was a resolution attached where basically just asking you to show support for the past decisions that we've made with customers, and also for going forward after June 12th to look at the different payment arrangements, the payment plan that we talked about, that I mentioned earlier, and also for the customer shutoffs for non-payments if they don't have payment arrangements with us.
How do you option?
Yeah, so our plan was, when I talked with Jackie about this, we would get those customers a letter letting them know that shutoffs are going to be happening unless they make arrangements with us. We would try to communicate with them in that letter what options may be available to them for financial assistance. Please call us for making arrangements. We've got special plans in place for this situation, and just encourage them. We talk with Joe and maybe Amanda, get out through social media, through Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be, put it on the city's website, just as much as possible to let them know what the potential is. Obviously if somebody doesn't call us or doesn't tell us what's happening, then they'll get it when the meter gets pulled. But and then they'll call us, and then we'll tell them, well, here's what we can do. So that's what I envision happening. And I would think that during the month of June, assuming that the board agrees with this plan to go forward, that we'd be getting those letters sent out, or getting that communication out to customers.
Ryan, do you know how this kind of compares to maybe what any other communities are doing?
Good question. We've had some calls with other AMP members, and Joe just sent me a note to please ask to make sure you're talking to the microphone.
Oh,
sorry, because the
Yeah, with the mask too.
yeah.
Sorry.
So this is our first go live meeting here, but the way people at home are hearing you is through the microphone, not through the microphone on the camera up there. So if you don't talk to the microphone, then nobody else outside of the room can hear what you're saying. So sorry.
You want me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Do you know what other communities are doing
Yes.
like us?
Okay, so yeah, we've had some phone calls with other AMP members. AMP has arranged conference calls with certain members that are interested in being on those conference calls for these exact situations, these exact issues. And most of them are implementing some kind of a shut off or a back to normal operations in June. Some are doing it as of June 1st. I think I heard one local Northwestern Ohio community was going to be looking at June 1st. They seem to be the earliest, but that was what they decided. I didn't hear anybody saying that they were going to go beyond June, maybe even into July or later. Some people said they were still looking at implementing their current policy when it comes to repaying the bill or paying the back due balance of and most of them have the same thing that we have. It's about a 1 month or a one billing cycle window. A lot of them said it was going to be a month. So I think the 3 months option is a little more generous than what are other communities offering. To me, what's important is collecting as much revenue as possible before the end of the year. And if that means giving customers an extra 2 months or an extra month of a payment plan, and at the end of this year, we've collected that money back from them, I would rather see that go into place than shutting them off completely. And then, maybe they have other, I don't know what they would do really. But this is special time. This is a unique situation. Obviously, I guess I took it to where we made some of these arrangements internally, and just thought that was the right decision to make to help and benefit customers. We could do it if the board has other ideas or other thoughts on a different plan. I'd be more than happy to entertain that or discuss that. These are just our suggestions and recommendations and why we thought a 3-month window would work as far as, looking at shutoffs and trying to encourage payments to come back to us. And again, we're operating a non-profit utility, and so we have bills we have to pay, and we're obligated to pay those bills. And if revenue doesn't come in, then our other customers are stuck helping to pay for that cost. And it's definitely not a free service.
No, thanks for your response. It seems reasonable to me. I just kind of want to know if you've been
Sure.
hearing from other communities. Thank you.
Sure.
Just one question for clarification, just talking about that 3-month cycle. Just so I understand, the shutoffs would happen either come September or if they would fall behind within those 1-month cycles, right? So like if I have a payment plan, but then I fall behind my rolling 1 month, we would be talking to shut off at that point.
Yeah.
In so much that we're not going to just all of a sudden have a bunch of shutoffs in September. If you're up and you're maintaining throughout and you're catching up, you get to the point where you might not have a shutoff at all. But if you fall behind early, there could be potential shutoffs in July and August en route to that, right?
Right. I think,
Okay.
If I understand the question correctly, I think the answer is yes. If they've made their payments up through, now let's say if they get to September and haven't made the last payment, that we would consider that to be, they would have broken that payment arrangement, and our next step would be go out and turn them off. So if they had made a payment in July and August that kept the current bill up to date, if they have a hardship, that's what we encourage them, call us, tell us what you're experiencing and tell us what's happening. Maybe we can work something out. But typically if they miss one of those payments, that's typically the sign to do the shut off. So it could happen. I mean, they could be pretty good for 2 months and then get turned off in September. If they don't keep their current balance paid, that's cause for shut off as well. And part of that is that, maybe it sounds somewhat harsh. It's to keep them from getting further and further behind to where they can't catch up at all. And we do try to talk to them about their usage. I mean, we do look at their monthly bill and see if there's a certain day which is really high for some reason on the water side or electric side, which is causing their bill to be higher. We talk to them about air conditioning load. We talk to them about their lighting load, what's happening in their house. Are they leaving lights turned on? Is their heat turned up, too high, or the cooling turned up to turn down too low? There are things that they can do themselves that will directly impact their bill. And maybe they don't think about it. It's just so natural to turn a light on or to turn the thermostat down a little bit. And so those things go into what makes your bill what it is. So some of that is education, but again, that's talking with and communicating with customers about what are you doing at your house or your apartment that impacts that cost.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move we approve Resolution 05-2020-01, Utilities Response to COVID-19 Pandemic.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved.
Okay, thank you. The next item is a request to accept the utility easement. This is pretty straightforward, very typical of the past easements that we've received from developers. I gave you an aerial view, which is probably the easiest one to look at for this. That would be the picture one you got there. Yep. So the blue property is what's being proposed as a senior living or care development facility off of South Dunbridge Road, just south of between Worcester and Napoleon Road. And the yellow dashed line is the proposed right-of-way that the property or the developer will donate to the city based on the city's requirements for right-of-way on Dunbridge Road. The red dashed line is the proposed sanitary sewer that will serve that property. And you can see it connects over into the red solid line, which runs north and south on Dunbridge, which is the sanitary sewer on Dunbridge. And then the yellow box is what we're talking about today. And that yellow box is a sanitary sewer easement that will be given to the city for maintenance and long-term care of that sewer pipe and manhole. The reason why they chose this route was that in between the two manholes that you see on your map, it's SMH 928 and SMH 929. There was a sanitary riser pipe that was installed with that sewer years ago, and that sewer is extremely deep. And if they can utilize that riser pipe, it will be a much easier and less costly attachment to the sanitary sewer than if they would just go right across the street and tap that manhole. So that's the reason why they want to jog the sewer to the north and then go into what looks like to be the middle of in between two manholes there. They don't own the property. They're not going to buy the property that's north of that blue shaded square. So the owner of the property to the north is the same one they're buying the property from. They're agreeable to giving us the easement. The owner is the Whitson LLC. And actually that sanitary sewer could potentially serve the property that isn't being sold by Whitson to the north of the senior development facility. So it does have some benefits for maybe some future customers that may want to have an easier or a less costly tap location for a sewer. Again, if it wasn't for the depth of the sewer out there, then we probably wouldn't be talking about this. But just given the existing situation and circumstances, this seemed to be the best and lowest cost option for getting sewer service to that property, and maybe to some future customers as well. It should also impact Dunbridge Road quite a bit less because they'll have to still dig across the road. And you can imagine if they had to dig, 20 feet deep versus 12 feet deep, you're going to destroy quite a bit larger portion of the road. And that's even more time and expense to rebuild the road, after the fact that the developer will have to pay for. The city will not pay for any of this cost, this construction cost. The sewer that will be in the right of way and the easement will be donated to us. We'll maintain it like we do all of our sewers, but that's nothing uncommon that we're not used to already doing today. So that's all I have unless you have questions on this one.
Chair, I move we approve Resolution 05202002, authorizing the Utilities Director to accept a utility easement.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Resolution's approved.
Okay, thank you. The last item is a request for to consider an economic development administration, or I'm going to say an EDA grant from this point forward from the federal government. And this is a new topic for us, a new grant opportunity that we have not discussed in the past. This will be our first time looking at this opportunity. But in 2017, the federal government passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which created these opportunity zones. And there's an opportunity zone in Bowling Green, and that opens up our potential to then go out and seek these grant dollars. Normally, the EDA funding is between 50 and 60%. I think we would qualify as at the 60% level. We weren't in these current this current situation, but we've had some indication that the grant could be for 80% or possibly higher, depending upon how much money they have to pass out. And we're hopeful it's going to be above 80%. So the mayor and Lori and myself and Sue Clark and Kate Thompson from the Bowling Green CDF, we did meet with Pogemeyer Design Group. They have a decent amount of experience with EDA grants and this whole process and what would qualify, what wouldn't, what does not qualify. And we identified several projects in the Woodbridge Business Park area that would meet the criteria for the EDA grant money. And the kicker is that they typically want these projects to be, several $1 million worth of spending. They don't want to fund a $500,000 expansion. They want it to be, over $5 million is their normal funding level. So these are substantial amounts of dollars, but it's also quite a bit of opportunity that we could realize if this does move forward. So in late April, we had a call with the EDA staff. I think he was in Chicago someplace. We explained to them what the project was, what our interest was. He gave us some pretty good feedback that this was a good possibility, that we would qualify, we would meet the criteria for the EDA grant. And so we put together a cost estimate with the help of Pogemeyer. And we listed 7 projects, and I identified those in your memo. And there's also a map which identifies where those 7 projects are located. And there's also a cost estimate that Pogemeyer had provided for us for each of those 7 projects. You can see all of them are centered around the Woodbridge Business Park area. Part 1 would be a road that is road and utilities that are built up from Worcester Street up to Woodland Drive, which would tie into Woodbridge. Part 5 is another road extension from Woodstream Drive over to Carter Road with utilities. Part 4 and Part 6 are roundabouts that would be that would improve traffic flow and the transportation network in that area. And then Part 7, Parts 2, I missed Parts 2 and 3 in there, but those are also the Worcester Street work. And Part 7 is the wastewater plant project, which you have heard about in the past, which is our aeration and biosolids blower project. And that project was estimated to be around $4.5 million. And we're still in that ballpark today. That engineering is going forward. It's in progress. Pogemeyer is doing that design work for us now. But I tried to break down for you in the second table in your write-up the 7 projects. What would the money be from I'll say the city side, but when I say that, I mean the non-utility side. and how much would be from utilities. I gave you that breakdown of those 7 projects. That would be utilities paying for any water or sanitary sewer work associated with those 7 items. And so you can see some of those items have no utility costs at all, such as items 2, 4, and 6. And the same thing on the city side, they have no costs involved with item 3 and 7. And again, 7 is the wastewater plant project at $4.5 million. The total construction cost in all for all the work is about $9.7 million. The engineering work, I gave you those costs from Pugmeyer's estimate as well. Just to note that does not include the engineering for the waste plant project because we're already paying for that as part of an EPA loan. So that's not included in this cost estimate. So total dollars when you wrap it up is about $10.4 million. And then the bottom part of that table, I sectioned out what it would be if we got 80% of the money from the grant and 20% was covered by the city, both non-utilities and utilities. And then added the engineering cost back into that. And so the city total, the non-utility side would be $1.3 million and the utility side would be $1.2 million, total of about 2.6. And then on the city side, or non-utility side, they can usually get some money from the state of Ohio, from ODOT and the jobs department there that ranges around 75% total for those roadway improvements. And so they could get potentially about $1 million back from grant money from the state and ODOT, which would be about $1 million. And so the non-utilities portion, the city's portion would be about $340,000. The utility side, our portion will be about $1.2 million. And these are big numbers, especially after what we just talked about at the very beginning of the meeting with the current revenue and financial situation that we're going to be going into here. However, if you consider that the waste plant project by itself, which was already going forward, we're getting a loan from that was $4.5 million that we were going to have to pay 100% of that money back. This is less cost for everybody overall and provides a much larger impact and opportunity than just the waste plant work by itself. So looking at it in that light, when I talked with Lori and with the mayor, we felt this was an opportunity that we probably should go after. And I know Mayor Osbacher has emphasized to us that we really can't lose sight of economic development projects, even though there's this current pandemic going on, and especially trying to leverage as much grant money as possible. And this seemed to be a way to do both of those, in a way that we have never really looked at before or explored before. So, let me see if anything else I wanted to cover with you. The time, if the grant is approved, of course, this would go to the city council for their approval as well, since they would have to authorize the mayor to sign for the grant. For the city's portion, I would anticipate that we would fund this through a BAN, or a bond and anticipation note, and that's a short-term borrowing, usually a 1-year borrowing that the city could go out and sell a bond for that year to pay for engineering, so we wouldn't have to exactly take cash directly out of our pocket and pay for that. Now the band is only good for a year, so the next year you have to renew the band. It's like it's a variable rate, because the next year your interest rate may be different than what this year's rate would be. But the city has issued a ban for the Parks and Rec building that was just constructed, and I think I was told that the interest rate was less than 1% on that loan, or that funding source. And so while it is a short-term financing for 12 months, you're basically getting very cheap money for doing a large project. That would also help to spread the cost of this out over a number of years. The bans typically don't have any minimum payment required on the principal. Normally you can pay interest only if you want. Typically you pay some of that principal back. So that does allow you to push that cost out into the future if you wanted to do so. The EDA grant does allow for the projects to be done over a 42-month period of time. And so that does give us a couple of years to implement these projects if it is decided to go forward and if the EDA would approve those. For the next steps we really have is to make the grant application. And that means we need a piece of legislation and board approval to apply for and accept the grant if it is awarded from the EDA office. And then we'd also have to get an engineer hired through an RFQ process or request for qualifications process that would help us do the design work and get us through the EDA administration. And so my recommendation, if the board would approve this, was we would utilize the Water and Sewer Capital Improvement Fund. That's the income tax fund. And we've identified cuts in that based on our discussion at the beginning of the meeting. There are other parts of that could be cut, or other parts of that budget that could be cut to fund this if this does go forward. And, one item in particular I would look at, we had an item line there for raw water storage improvements. And we don't have a definitive project for that yet. That was sort of a set aside of about $500,000 in this year's budget to do some type of a reservoir project or a storage project. In my proposed budget cuts for that fund, I looked to cut $100,000 out of that to get down to $400,000. And so, if this would go forward, my suggestion would be to lower that $400,000 down to $250,000, and that would cover our $150,000 for the engineering costs associated with this work until the ban would go forward, and then maybe that could be covered by the ban down the road. But I think financially we have a way in utilities to cover this cost. It's going to impact other potential projects, but this isn't anything we haven't seen before. We're trying to adjust our priorities as the year goes on. Again, I gave you the project map. I gave you the cost estimates from Pogemeyer for the work that we were looking at doing. And I think that's what I have for you.
Brian, what's the timing on the application process and when those funds would be available? I mean, do you have any idea? Are there deadlines, or is it a rolling?
I don't think there's any certain deadline. Like, I know EPA has deadlines for loan applications. Laura, do you recall? She said that's a rolling application process. And from what we heard from the EDA person that we talked to on the phone, I think at this point in time with what's going on, their interest is in getting as much money out as possible to get things moving again. And I think they would move forward pretty quickly if it looked like it was a good fit for their funding sources. I don't have more for you on timing than that. I'm sorry. I think if obviously there's going to be a long time for engineering of this much work. This is, I mean, you're talking, over about $10 million and almost $9.5 million roughly in construction costs. The good news is that the waste plant project, which is almost half of that cost, that design work is probably 75% done, and that could go forward very, very quickly once that's completed. We don't have any work really done on the other transportation projects or the utility extension projects at this time, but those are pretty straightforward, tasks. I mean, it's put pipe in the ground and build a road. We've done that before, so. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'll make two motions, but I do agree. I think this is a great way to leverage some federal dollars to help with our projects here. So certainly supportive of it. Madam Chair, I'd move we approve Resolution 05-2020-03, authorizing Utilities Director to apply for and accept an Economic Development Administration EDA grant.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Resolution's approved.
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move we approve Resolution 05-2020-04, authorizing Utilities Director to advertise for requests for qualifications and enter into a contract or contracts for engineering and administrative services for projects associated with the Economic Development Administration EDA grant funding.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved.
Thank you. As you can see, I asked most of the staff to stay home if they didn't have a report. One of them didn't listen. That's okay. The only report I got back from staff was from Mike Johnson. And he just wanted to let you know that the work on Maple Street is going well. They've got over half of the sewer laterals reconstructed and tied in, and they're continuing work on doing sewer laterals. We will have the board approved relining that sewer in our past meeting, and so we'll have a bid that will go out to contractors for relining that sewer yet this year. And then after the sewer laterals are completed, they'll start working on the water line installation and getting customers hooked to the new line so we can abandon the old line. And then Public Works will take it over and they'll rebuild the street and all that. So that's all I have, unless you have questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports? Mr. Mayor, Lori?
Good evening. I just want to share some compliments of the utility department with all of you with what we've been through these last couple months. You know, all of us were asked to change our lives very quickly, literally overnight. People had business models that changed. And like you, the city of Bowling Green experienced the same thing. You know, we had to make quick assessments. But there were a lot of things that we couldn't do at home. You know, our business office quickly adapted to an at-home model, you know, worked out various components with the drop box, but our plants still had to operate. People still had to be here every minute of every day to make sure that people had safe water to drink and that water is safely disposed of. And we still had emergencies. The most noticeable one was Mother's Day, where we had a very large electric outage. Our folks were in right away. But there are often smaller things that people don't realize, a lot of emergencies that go on with water and sewer. And our folks worked so well through all of it. They made adaptations to schedules. They really prioritized customers, businesses, and worked through this. And I'm just really proud of all of them for the outstanding work that they provided to this community. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Any other, no one else here, council committee reports, new business, unfinished business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.